The Football Show
with Paddy Power, fueling the mischief in the beautiful game. Gamble responsibly. CWE.net.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should there be an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
Well, the Premier League is back and we have an off-the-ball football special over the next 3 hours with Paddy Power, fueling the mischief in the beautiful game. Coming up between now and 4 o'clock, I'll be in the company of former Republic of Ireland captain Kenny Cunningham. We'll be joined by former Celtic and Scotland boss Gordon Strachan, and we'll talk to former Liverpool captain Phil Thompson about the first weekend of the Premier League and the games coming up this weekend, including our huge live and exclusive game on Off the Ball this coming Sunday, when Kenny will be alongside Nathan Murphy for commentary on Chelsea against Liverpool. Then after 4 o'clock, we have a very special edition of the Crappy Quiz, and we will have an interview with Wes Brown, who has sat down with David Myler after 5 o'clock. We also have a Paddy Power half hour coming up, where we'll be talking to Gary Breen and Paddy Power himself to look forward to all the football this coming weekend. As I mentioned, Kenny Cunningham is here with me. Kenny, how are things?
All good, Will.
Decent first weekend of football back that we had. Your game was Leicester against West Brom. What did you make of
Seems
West
like
Brom's
about a
return?
month ago.
It only feels like a month ago since the game's finished, whatever last weekend.
But so many games every day. It's a funny little stagnated approach to the season. It's been a bit odd, like looking forward to it so much, and to be almost being teased with the games, kind of drip fed the games day in, day out. But yeah, it's great to have the season underway, and yeah, a couple of standout games already. I wouldn't necessarily say the West Bromwich Albion Leicester game was one of them, but I was impressed with Leicester, obviously missing some key players. Took a bit of time to grow into the game, but it was kind of a very kind of professional, efficient performance from them. It was a comfortable victory, exactly what Brendan Rodgers would have wanted first game of the season.
Yeah, well, that was one of the teams going up into the top flight. Leeds made their return after 16 seasons back into the Premier League on Saturday. They played out a cracker, probably game of the weekend, their 4-3 defeat against Liverpool. We're joined by a former English Football League winner with Leeds in Gordon Strachan. Gordon, good afternoon to you.
Hi, good afternoon to you, Will, and good afternoon to you, Kenny. How are you?
Yeah, look, I think we're doing all right. Kenny got dragged in off the beach to chat to us, so he has to slightly get over that, but I think he's happy enough to join us for a bit of football chat. Gordon, Leeds back into the Premier League. I mean, one of the real giants of English football, almost 2 decades away, was really too long for your old club, wasn't it?
Yeah, and the last month people are asking me, what do you think of Leeds being back in the Premiership? And I did say that there's teams that come in and out of the Premiership. You don't really notice they've been there. They don't really do anything exciting. They come and make up the numbers, disappear, and we go, yeah, they play some nice football, blah, 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 very nice. See you later, back to the Championship. But I did say when Leeds come along that the world will be watching their games because they're one of the giants of the Premier League or English football. And the fact is, they've got so many rivalries with most clubs. Chelsea Leeds is huge. I want to watch it. Leeds, Manchester United, absolutely huge in the calendar for football fans around the world. And I said that the crowds would add to it, home and away. But what I didn't, and I knew they'd put a good performance in at the weekend, but I really didn't think they could play as well as that. That was easily the best performance I've ever seen with a team that's just been promoted in the top league. Maybe people argue with that, but that was a game that, considering it wasn't a crowd, that you couldn't take your eyes off it, and the energy come from the players to the screen, to into my household, and I think that's what everybody got from it. And we're all sitting there looking at it, going, how can this manager be this brave? Because 99.9 managers that go to Liverpool would be probably saying, how do we stop Liverpool playing? Can I fill in spaces there? Can I fill in areas there? Do I play 3 at the back? Do I play 5 at the back? Do I play 6 at the back at times? No, what does Bielsa do? He goes and attacks, and he goes and closes down players. And at times, Liverpool back 4, it was 4 against 4. They have never played against 4 against 4 for many a year. And to be that brave, it's not on my radar, that one, to be that brave.
Yeah, because I suppose a lot of people focus on
performance.
A lot of people kind of focus on Van Dijk's mistake, Gordon, at the weekend, which allowed in for the Bamford goal. But part of the reason that Van Dijk makes that mistake is that Bamford and the other attacking players on the Leeds team are pushing right up on Liverpool and making sure they don't have an easy out ball back to Alisson every time.
Yeah, I also think that Liverpool, because we can go into later on how Liverpool scare the Levandelics out of teams. As I said, they're very rarely used to that. Not that just even the physical pressure. It was the mental pressure, I think. I don't think Liverpool would have been expecting that, their back four, their centre-backs, to be under that kind of pressure where they're thinking all the time, where's the next move coming from? So it was a physical and, I think, a mental pressure that led to that. And to be fair, we're allowed to give the big fella one mistake every, 5 years? But if you set that sort of standards when you make a mistake, then people will have a look at that. But I just think it surprised Liverpool, because I don't think anybody's taken them on at their own game. Other teams might have beaten them doing other things, playing balls forward, crashing into their centre halves. Man City might do it another way. They play in their own style, their own way of playing. But I think it was the first time I've seen anybody taking Liverpool on their own game, high energy, closing down, being brave on the ball when you get it back, being able to get through the first wave of defence and then go and attack. So I think that surprised everybody at Liverpool. I think it surprised everybody who watched the game, because we knew Leeds could do that in the Championship. But when you come to take on the best team in Europe, arguably, then you need to be a real brave manager to do that. And also, you've got to be a manager that's convinced these players that you can do it. Because I've seen many a player lining up against Liverpool thinking, I'd rather be somewhere else than here today, because I know my physical and mental strength's got to be tested. But the Leeds players took them on at that. So that was refreshing. Whether then a lot of managers out there can do that because of the physical state of the players, or the mental strength of himself as a manager, I doubt it very much.
I wonder as well, Gordon, when it comes to Liverpool this season, we can chat to Phil Thompson maybe about this a bit in around half an hour's time, but when it comes to Liverpool, I wonder how much of a loss crowds are going to be from Anfield for them, at least in the early stages of the season, because typically, had that been the first game of the year, Liverpool's first home game since being crowned champions last year, it would have been a packed and a rocking Anfield last Saturday evening. Instead, a team arrives to an empty stadium. It has to be a little bit of a leveller compared to going to Liverpool in a normal time.
Well, you could say that, but the way Liverpool started, I mean, really, you wouldn't have said that you'll need a crowd for that start, because I've seen Liverpool a few times, and yes, they can start like that, and sometimes they don't. So for the manager and the players, they couldn't have started any better, I don't think, in terms of pressure on Leeds and getting at them and making chances. But that didn't, as I get back to it, didn't scare Leeds. They went, okay, they might get chances, but we're going to the other end. So I really don't know. I've got what you're saying about the crowd. Yeah, I've got what you're saying. But on the other side, and Kenny will tell you, being a football player, that they usually give you 10 minutes, home crowds, and they're behind you. Way, this is great, wonderful, here we go. But after 10 minutes, you've no scored or not had an attempt at goal. It's, oh dear, what's happening here? It's one of the days. So you can feel it for the crowd on the negative side. So there's a positive and negative to that. And some players would have a problem with negative, not at Liverpool, I would imagine, because they're all mentally strong. And saying that, because it's quite strange, actually, negative energy can actually make you play better at times. So, as I said, it's a question that might be answered, that one. But the fact is they've won a game. Again, they've won, with or without the crowd. And it was just said to Liverpool, are you going to make this amount of chances before the game starts? And I think they had about 20-odd chances, 22, 23 chances. If you say, right, you've got to make 23, you'd be happy with that as a manager. Really happy. Also, are you happy to get into these scoring positions? There were one pass of great moves at times. So I don't think Liverpool can look at themselves and go, well, it's the crowd. They won the game. They've made 20-odd chances, it was similar to the, I think, Newcastle-Liverpool game years ago, and that was with a crowd, and you're getting a 4-3 without a crowd. So it's a question that's very hard to get answered, to be honest with you.
Kenny, I'll ask Gordon about Liverpool in a moment, but your thoughts on Liverpool Still the team to beat this season, or do you reckon this is going to be a Man City year? What do you think at the outset of the year?
No, I think Liverpool are still the team to beat. I think they showed up well from an attacking point of view. In terms of their attacking threat, individual players high up the pitch. I didn't think Firmino had his best game, to be honest with you, but Salah looked particularly sharp. I just felt maybe Leeds a bit of a template there for other teams in terms of any potential frailties in the Liverpool team. Seems a strange thing to talk about, the weaknesses in the Liverpool team off the back of how what they've achieved last season. But even last season, I always felt as if in terms of that defensive line, keep a very high line and maintain that. It's not just a case of keeping the line, but they maintain that line at all costs. I think it's an opportunity for opposition teams to look to play in behind, but not too many teams do. But Leeds certainly did that. Gordon alluded to it there. Not only did they commit players high up the pitch, but they put the ball in behind Liverpool very quickly. Actually, it's similar to Liverpool in some respects. Liverpool don't hang about in terms of getting the ball back to front of their front three. It's actually reasonably direct at times. I thought Leeds were as well. When they had the opportunity to put the ball in behind, they did. They got Liverpool on the back foot. The Harrison Forrest goal, great diagonal ball from Davis in behind Trent Alexander-Arnold. The defensive line didn't recover in unison together. They took advantage. Even the Bamford goal you spoke about, yes, it was a mistake from Van Dijk, but at least they're putting the ball over the shoulder, asking questions of them, making them defend, and not everything's in front of Van Dijk and Gomez, where they're very comfortable. Leeds actually asked them questions in behind and down the sides, and that defensive line was very fragmented for the majority of that game. So that will give a little bit of encouragement to opposition teams in terms of any potential weakness in that Liverpool team, but they're very strong mentally. Gordon alluded to there, they're absolutely relentless. You just sense if the hunger's still there amongst the Liverpool players. That's probably why Klopp hasn't kind of reinforced the squad. He's happy with the dressing room. He's happy with the attitude and the mentality of the players. And yes, I still think they're the team to beat.
Gordon, what do you think about Jurgen Klopp's decision? I know we're in the middle of a pandemic, so people have to be careful about the money anyway, but he said it was very much his call not to have big upheaval after winning the league last season. He wanted to go with roughly the same group as last season. You've had 40 days or so between the two campaigns. Is there a chance that this Liverpool squad, given that they played roughly the same 20 or so players last season, that fatigue could become an issue for them this year?
It could, and you could say the same with Leeds, I suppose. But we thought that, but it never materialised, the lack of fitness. They keep going because there's an energy you get from winning. There's an adrenaline energy. It's funny that usually the teams who are getting beat talk about fatigue. And I don't think fatigue will be in the vocabulary of any Liverpool coach at all. I think the word fatigue will never... Sir Alex Ferguson was the same. If you mention fatigue, you're liable to get dropped the next game. I think if you speak to Mark Bosnich about that, he went to pre-season tour and said we're getting tired, too many games, he never played. So there's a thing with the top sides that it's no fatigue. It's part of the deal. When you're a top player, you play week in, week out, and deal with it. Also, that Klopp sees what we don't see. He sees youngsters. He sees great young players. And if he thinks they're good enough and they've got the mindset to join in with the team right away with this high tempo pressing, being good on the ball when you get it back, positive. He sees that in his young players. There's no need for him to go anywhere else to keep the media or keep some fans happy. That's the decisions you make as a manager. If he sees something that's 150 million and they decide that's going to definitely make Liverpool better, they will do something like that. They did it with Virgil van Dijk and the goalkeeper, right? Everybody's got, that's an awful lot of money for a goalkeeper. That's centre half. You're paying 70 million for him. Now they're saying, what a deal that was. And what you've got to do is trust the manager. He sees what he's got behind the scenes and he looks at it. What's the point in bringing in somebody at 60 million who's just the same as a kid that can go on there? But I think Kenny was bringing about about Liverpool's, the ball's going in behind. But I think the first goal was fantastic with Leeds. That was a diagonal ball getting in behind. That was fantastic. But that come from the fact that Leeds were brave enough on the ball to get on the ball and play. And also their other good moves come for counter-attack, where they've won the ball back. Instead of dismissing it, they were brave on the ball, beat one or two. Once you get past one Liverpool player, as a second one comes in, if you can beat two, then you're away. Because that's a defensive thing. Press with one, another one helps. If you can beat the two, then you're going right up the park. So I think we've we've got to stick with Jurgen because he's probably the best manager in the world. That's arguably the best manager, and you've got to trust him, which I think every Liverpool supporter and player, they believe in that man.
Away from the Premier League, Gordon, just want to ask you about the move that Shane Duffy has made. He's gone to Celtic on loan from Brighton for the year. And we'll see if he stays there beyond that. Gary Breen thought last weekend on Off the Ball this Saturday that maybe it might be a mistake from his point of view, that going to the SPL could be a regression. He could potentially pick up bad habits while he's in Scotland. What's your take on Duffy's decision to move north of the border then?
I think when I was at Celtic, Roy Keane wanted to join Celtic. And he came to us for 75% less than what he was on at Manchester United. Okay, he wasn't going to play at Manchester United again, but he could have went elsewhere. There's a thing about the club, if you support Celtic, just to play, get the strip on and be in front of the crowd, the whole thing. And what you've got, no matter what happens, and I hope it happens for Shane, that he plays in the Champions League. I don't know if any of you still have been to a Champions League night, a big game at Celtic Park. There's no better place. And I've been to Champions League nights at Man United, Liverpool. It's the best place you could play football. Yes, I agree with Gary on a lot of things Gary said. And that's unusual because you usually fight like cat and dog with manager and player. But I did like him. I really did like Gary. And I get on great with him now. He's worked with my son. He was good. And he was also a very good centre-half, by the way. I can see where he's coming from. But just to put in perspective, what Gary actually said, and he's had a lot of flack from people who've not even really listened to what he said. Because it's the usual thing in Scotland. If you give us stick, we're going to kill you. But we can give a stick to our own league. But don't anybody else give us stick. So what Gary was saying, there's a lot of truth in what Gary was saying. That he said that probably wasn't a Premiership striker that Shane Duffy's got to face. Right? Now, then you get the people in the Scottish newspapers go, well, what about Edouard? Well, he's not going to face Edouard. He's on the same side as Edouard. You know, that's how much some people have thought about this. But Gary's right. There is times when he'll not be tested. Absolutely not be tested. It's like being a goalie in a great side where you're only called upon now and then to make the big decisions. And it's the same thing on Saturday. You know, now and then he was called upon to make big decisions in the game. He made them well. And I think he's also got to go, once the crowds get back and things like that, that battle with the old firm this year is something you want to be involved with as a football player, because when he goes head-to-head with Rangers and Celtic, the adrenaline excitement that's flowing is phenomenal. So he's got to get that, which he's never had before in anywhere else he's played. He'll get it with the Republic Island and big nights, but the head-to-head with somebody like Rangers is something you want to experience. So if you experience that, play for the club you supported, and Champions League football, European football, then there is a positive and a negative. Yes, he will be going to some places where he's playing on plastic pitches, which I detest, and shouldn't be allowed, should be scrapped, give them away to some non-league team. And I know but the positives are well worth going through some of the negatives.
And I'd imagine, Gordon, on the final note, when it comes to this window for Celtic, they'll probably be happy to have Duffy in where they were short to cover at centre-back and probably needed a new starting centre-back anyway. If they can hold on to Edson Edouard until the second week of October, that makes it not the worst window for Celtic.
That'd be a good window, because they signed young David Turnbull, who's got to be a good player. They're still in the outlook for a left-back. It's been a good window, and then listen, in the real world, the Premier League, it's not much, about 12-13 million. But Celtic have a problem. If Celtic want to guarantee that they're going to beat Rangers and do well in the Champions League, they have to pay. Look what Chelsea are paying, 240 million. So Celtic would have to pay 150 million to guarantee they're going to do all that. Guaranteed players. But if it doesn't work, then that's a club bankrupt. So Celtic will do what they do, as they have been doing for the last 15 years, buying people for 2 million, 3 million, 1.5, trying to create a right good football like they did with Wanyama, Dembele, Van Hooijdonk, all these players. Van Dijk, sorry. So that's what they do, Celtic. And so far they've been doing it well. So if you win 9 championships in the trot and about 15 in the last 17, then you're doing things right. But again, I still think that they'll still try and look at a left-sided defender, I think, because Tierney, as you've seen recently, is a player that can play in many positions. Wing back, left centre back. So they got good money for Kieran, but I still think that they need a bit of presence and a left-sided defender.
Gordon, thanks a million for joining us on our Off the Ball Football Special.
No problem at all. You look after yourself, guys. Stay safe and healthy.
Cheers, Gordon.
Gordon, all the best. I'll ask you about that, Kenny, as well, what you think about this Shane Duffy move then, because it's split opinion somewhat, but I think for a lot of Republic of Ireland fans, this big game against Slovakia is coming up. If he had stayed at Brighton, Graham Potter had made it fairly clear he wasn't his first choice to stay in that defence. It's better for him to get 8 or 9 games for Celtic now, particularly before that Slovakia game, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it is, yeah. I was a little bit disappointed at some of the kind of argument around Gary Breen's comments. You know, I got a little bit too aggressive for me. Gordon gave a very balanced argument there. I've read what Breeny said. I thought Breeny made some fair points. What he probably didn't speak about, wasn't spoken about enough, was the kind of emotional attachment some players have towards Celtic Football Club, some more than others, and that's clearly the case with Shane. You can hear it in his voice when he speaks about it. I think Gordon made a good point as well in terms of exposure to Champions League football. What's Shane's chances of actually experiencing Champions League football at Brighton or potentially another Premiership club outside the top 4 or 6? Very little, so don't underestimate that. Unfortunately, he won't have the experience of playing in front of Gordon spoke about the atmosphere Champions League night. Maybe for him, he may not experience that all season, and that'll be an absolute shame. But Breeny made some valid points which stand up in terms of how much he's going to be tested defensively. I'd probably flip that over a little bit as well. Or to make the argument what Shane's going to have, he's going to be playing higher up the pitch, and he's going to have more touches in possession than he did at Brighton. So he's got an opportunity there for me in terms to work on maybe his productivity in possession of the football. He's going to have plenty of time to step forward, make passes, big diagonal switches, go and step into midfield, these type of things which maybe he hasn't had the opportunity to do during his career at Brighton. Defence-minded team, predominantly defend on the edge of their penalty box, and he's been great at that, but hasn't had too much opportunity in a Brighton jersey in a team which really dominates possession to get on the ball and really kind of sharpen up and maybe improve the other aspect of his game, and he will have an opportunity to do that at Celtic. So I think it's good and bad. I don't think anybody's a loser, really, in all honesty. I think everybody's a winner. Celtic will certainly will be delighted with him coming into the football clubs. They'll be strengthened. I think Shane will be absolutely buzzing. He will get that competitive football week in, week out. We can argue in terms of what level, but for me that's not a huge argument. I just think mentally he'll be in a good place. He'll be enjoying his football, getting regular football, and an opportunity to sharpen that other part of his game, which we probably haven't spoken about for a long time in terms of his footballing ability on the ball. So I think it was actually a very good argument. It was a very interesting argument. I'm just disappointed that it ended up in people kind of throwing spears and verbally throwing bottles at each other. I didn't think that was needed. I just thought it was a very interesting argument, and there was a kind of merit on both sides, what everybody was saying. Also, I'd imagine if you're Shane Duffy, you grow up as a Celtic fan. They're on the cusp of potentially doing 10 in a row and doing that massive history, and they're chasing down Rangers' total titles. You've got the chance to be a member of that team that wins 10 in a row. No, absolutely, and that means everything. That means everything to people. And you can strip it back and say, "Oh, the level, would he not be better playing the Premiership?" Boom, boom, boom. But for some people, that's everything. And we're all different. Our makeup's different, emotions, the whole thing, what we value, what we don't. And Shane may feel, and we can all understand that a year at Celtic and under those circumstances that you've mentioned, 10 in a row, absolutely historic. He'll be remembered within as a member of that squad, like legendary status, and that means absolutely everything to people. So I can absolutely understand it. And like I said, I didn't think there was a right or a wrong argument. I thought it was a great discussion, and I thought it was an intelligent discussion that Breeny actually started off. And I thought Gordon gave a very balanced opinion in terms of the pros and minuses there. And I just feel as that everybody to a certain extent kind of gains from the move.